Many years ago, in the city of Asaba, there lived a young woman named Susan. She was a successful businesswoman. Susan was kind, intelligent, and very hardworking. Though admired by lots of men and women for her success, Susan was a sorrowful woman. At 38, she was still unmarried. She has been involved in several relationships which never ended well. All the men she dated all came to have a fair share of her wealth, as they all dumped her for their young lovers. One fateful afternoon, Susan sat at her cozy apartment. She sat quietly, surrounded by the bustling noise of the sounds of the city of Asaba. She looked so sad, gazing at one of the portraits that hung on the wall. It was the framed picture of her late father, who had always been her pillar of strength and inspiration. She had just taken over the helm of affairs at her father's company at a very young age after his untimely demise. Susan had just graduated from the University of Boston in the United States of America with a first class in business admin and project management. Her father had just slumped and died few weeks back. After he returned from her graduation, it was a hard time for Susan and her mother, Mama Susan, even though the death of Susan's father hit her badly. With years, she was able to grapple with the reality. She boldly walked in the steps of her father, taking the company to its greater heights. She just wished he was there to just pat her back, as he always did whenever she needed a shoulder to cry on. Her mother, Mama Susan, was far away in Lagos, where she was running her pharmacy business. Luckily for Susan, she had been part of her father's business right when she was a teenager. Father made sure she was involved in his business. She was their only child, even though all these years Susan had been successful, but she couldn't shake off the feeling of loneliness. The fact that her friends and family never failed to remind her about their concern, though well intentioned, added to the heavy burden on her heart. This was one of the reasons she has stood so low to have several relationships with even younger men that were much younger. All that she craved for was a man that would love her and cherish her, even if he was not rich. At this time of her life, she was desperate to settle down. Her mother was really on her neck. She was wealthy and was ready to finance their wedding. Money was never the problem. And knowing how it was with the reality of not yet settling down with a man, as she would soon turn 40, all she wanted was a good man that would love her genuinely. Sadly, that fateful afternoon, her relationship with Edem just ended when she got a call from one of her trusted customers and friend named Alicia. Alicia that morning called her on the phone that she saw Edem walk into a guest hotel with a young woman, and they were all over each other. Alicia's office was close to the guest house, and she clearly recognized Edem as Susan's fiancé. He had on several occasions visited her with Edem in her office. So that was how Susan, out of curiosity and disbelief, went to the guest house, parked at the car park, and waited for some hours. After some hours, Edem finally walked out. The young woman, smiling, they were holding hands, laughing and falling on each other. Susan could not believe her eyes. At first, she thought it was a dream. But when Edem and the young woman were about to drive off, she hastily walked up to them in anger. Edem, she screamed in frustration and anger. Edem, I thought you said you are traveling, that you are going to see your mother in Akwa Ibom. So what are you doing here? Edem could not say a word. He had caught them red-handed, and he had no explanation to justify what she just saw. Susan was so furious. Her heart was beating so fast. With deep pain in her heart, she said to Edem and warned him sternly to come close to her house or her office and never call her phone number. Susan was heartbroken that afternoon when she left the office and went back home. All this time she had been with Edem. He looked so innocent, perfect. He has always loved, sang her praises. Edem was handsome, intelligent, and had this calm demeanor. He spoke with soft words. He had those qualities that could sweep any woman off her feet. Edem really knew how to treat her, and she fell for him. She had no reason to doubt his love. Susan and Edem had fixed a date when he would be coming to see her family, who were so happy that at last she was finally going to get married, especially her mother, who had been concerned all these years. Although her mother was a strong-willed woman with a heart full of love for her, she was always on the phone, reminding Susan she was no longer getting any younger. Her voice always filled with worry and sadness that Susan could feel from her voice. During their last conversation before she met Eden, her mother was on the phone again. Susan, my daughter, since your father left us, I have been lonely. Please, my child, I want you to give me grandchildren so my soul could be happy. You see, you need to find a husband. It is time for you to settle down and start a family. Susan felt this lump form in her throat. She loved her mother dearly and wanted to make her proud. Mama, I know. You don't need to constantly remind me, replied Susan sadly. She was becoming tired of the constant pressure from her mother to marry. The truth still remains that I can't force myself on any man. I'm also concerned as you are. I'm even the one wearing the shoe here. You know what I've been through all these years? You want me to do? Continued in a sad tone. Please, my child. You have the money. And you are very beautiful. Mama, forget that money cannot buy love. Marriage is not a one-day thing. It's for life. And I need to be careful who I spend my life with. Please, just keep praying for me. That's all I need. I will surely get married. No problem, Susan. I've heard you. Well, that's not all the reason why I called you. I also want to remind you that I'll be going to see your cousin, Ebere, in Abuja. Just put to bed her third child. And I will be leaving for Abuja next week. Oh, that's fine, Mama. She told me. Please extend my regards to her. Susan replied, Mama, I'm busy for now. We'll talk later, Susan said and ended the call. She was already teary. It felt like someone stabbed her. She could feel the pain. Her two younger cousins, Ebere and her younger sister, who she trained in school, are both already married with children. They called her auntie. She felt so sad that with all her money, success, marriage was still a hard nut to crack. Now see Edem, who promised to come see her family, had just suddenly stopped picking her call. And the next thing, she caught him cheating with another younger woman. Just dashed her hope into pieces. That small boy that I thought was different, if not that I was being careful, he would have duped me of my hard-earned money. Maybe that's even why he just decided to treat me the way he did, since he was not getting anything from me. Susan muttered. It's been 2 weeks since Susan broke up with Edem. It has been a difficult time for her. These 2 weeks, Susan made up her mind to love herself and think less about getting involved in any relationship for now. One fateful evening, she decided to go on a walk. She had been home all day, and it has been a boring day for her, so she needed to get fresh air, and that would do her much good. So she walked along her estate, glad to go for Mother Nature. As she approached the park was serene with beautiful trees and flowers. Children and their parents could be seen having fun together. As Susan made herself comfortable on one of the chairs inside the park, she closed her eyes, listening to the chirping birds on the trees. She was just lost in the surroundings. She enjoyed the beautiful cool breeze, the fresh of breath air. She watched children playing and running after one another, and she remembered when she was a child. Nothing ever bothered her. It was just fun all through. Young couples could also be seen holding hands, speaking into each other's ears as they laughed out loud. It was a lovely scene. Susan hoped and wished she would experience genuine love someday. So when it was getting dark, she decided to leave the park, which was quite a distance from her estate. As she walked back to her apartment, she ran into Frank, her neighbor. He was just driving along the road when he first sighted her. He was hooting the horn of his car behind her, trying to get her attention. So when Susan turned, she saw that it was Frank, although before now, they just greeted whenever they ran into each other in the estate, as their houses were quite close to each other. So they greeted and exchanged pleasantries. Frank was smiling and also curious, could not hide his curiosity. So he asked Susan, what are you doing outside? You know you hardly stroll in this neighborhood. You know you're a very busy lady. he said, smiling, and for the first time Susan could notice how handsome Frank was. He spoke with this calm, deep voice. She had never looked at him whenever they greeted, because he was always in the company of his wife. So she just greeted him and walked past him. So how is your wife? Susan quickly asked. I mean, madam. Oh, Frank exclaimed. I'm not married. That lady you saw me with is my cousin. She returned from the States. Before now, she has never been to Nigeria, so I had to take her everywhere since this was her first time. Well, she had just left 3 days ago back to the States. In a few minutes, they were home. Susan thanked him for the lift and quickly left back to her apartment. She didn't believe that Frank was a bachelor all this time. Also, he was handsome and seems friendly. That night, the thought of Frank filled her mind. She got so attracted to him that she almost wanted to go out and knock at his door. But she had to restrain herself, reminding herself that it was not ladylike, and also she just broke up with Edem and that she needed more time to heal. Not after all these pains and deceit she had in her past relationship. This was not the right time for her to get into any relationship. Why the rush? She doesn't even know if Frank had a girlfriend who would be interested in her. This she muttered to herself as she tossed on her bed trying to catch a sleep. Few weeks later, Frank and Susan soon became friends. Frank sometimes would ask Susan to cook for him as he observed Susan just loved cooking. It was hobby for her. They went on several dates, had lots of fun, visited the cinema, just getting to know each other. There was this one thing about Frank that made Susan uneasy. Whenever she tried to ask Frank about the nature of his job, he would either avoid the question. But on one of their dates, she insisted she wanted to know what he was doing. Well, I'm a general contractor, Frank said proudly. So, you mean you do not major in any area? No, no, replied Frank. I don't want to limit myself. You see, I'm everywhere, always ready to deliver. I travel around the country doing my business. As you can see, I'm doing so well for myself. He tried to force a smile. This did not go down so well, Susan, but she ignored it. After all, that wasn't a problem to her. She was doing well. However, after some months of dating, Frank proposed to her and she said a big yes to him. They were in love and knew they were meant for each other. They were in the company of her friend Laura, her closest friend from childhood. Laura was married with 4 children. She has always been there for Susan all these years. She was so happy for her friend that had finally found true love. That she thought. She was so happy that finally Susan was happy. She saw Susan smiling from all the sides of her mouth as she proudly showed her her ring. Bestie, can you see my beautiful ring? Susan said, looking so happy. Before their wedding, they decided to move to a bigger apartment and in the high brow of Asaba. Frank soon came with his people to see Susan's family, and soon the traditional wedding and white wedding was fixed. Mama Susan was so happy that finally her only child and daughter was getting married. Meanwhile, that afternoon, when Susan returned to her family house in the village for her traditional marriage, as custom demands, when Frank and his family arrived, noticed something about Frank. She just couldn't place it, but she knew something was odd about him. She tried to ignore it, saying that Susan was happy and in love. That evening, after their traditional marriage, Mama Susan had some talk with Susan, my daughter. What do you say this man does for a living, Mama? He's a general contractor, Susan replied. Which one is general contractor again? I mean, what's his job? Into construction. Oh, Mama, please stop bothering me. You have to relax. How many times will you ask me this question? Susan snapped. But my child, I'm just curious and concerned. I don't want a man that will become a liability to you. He looks so like a playboy. Let me just say it. I know this may be hard, but I just have this feeling that something is wrong. Just look at the way he's throwing himself on you, as if you are his last breath. I just hope we are doing the right thing. I hope this love is real. Ma, you have started this on negative talk. You have cried and prayed for a day like this to come. And here we are. And you are just being sarcastic. Mama, I don't understand you at all. Are you not happy for me? Susan was sad and angry as she walked out to go meet Frank and his family, who were devouring the food presented to them. Meanwhile, a few weeks later, Susan and Frank got married in a grand style. Susan looked stunning in her white gown, her happiness radiating through her smile. Frank was also looking dashing in his well tailored suit. The ceremony was filled with heartfelt vows, cheers, and blessings from loved ones and friends. Susan felt her heart swell with hope and excitement for the future she would build with Frank. She believed she had finally found her true love. They had their honeymoon outside the country. A few weeks after their wedding, Susan resumed work fully. She noticed that Frank was not saying anything about his job. He just continued to lie on the bed, pressing his phone, smiling at the picture. This made Susan uneasy. She could not hold herself one fateful morning. Said to Frank, "Honey, it's been 3 weeks to married, and you know we spent a lot of money during our wedding. We need to work hard." "Yes, I know," Frank replied, rubbing his head. "You know my work now. Nobody have called me yet. I'm still talking with some people. There's this big job I'm waiting for. Once it pulls through, we'll be traveling to Aba, like I told you before. My job is not certain, but Frank, thought you said you have an office and workers that work for you. At least leave the house and go and sit at your office instead of just sitting at home all day, idling away your time." "Well, Susan, I have no office, and my staff are contract staff. I call them when I need their services, and that is when I have a job for them. I don't know why this is so hard for you to understand, but that's not what you told me," Susan replied in disappointment. She was already getting angry with Frank. "So you mean you lied to me? Because I know you did not explain this to me." "Wait, to Frank, you mean you only leave the house when you are called for a business?" "Frank, this is too early for this." "Well, let me just go to work and come back." Susan left in disappointment. "Honey, I hope there's food for me," Frank asked. But Susan, who was very angry, did not reply him as she walked to her car and drove off to her office. At her office, she thought about what Frank told her that morning. She left for work. She decided to play cool, for it was too early for her to conclude. However, when she got home that evening, she met Frank watching the TV and smiling, holding a bowl of popcorn and just chilling. He welcomed her and continued to watch the TV. "Did you eat anything?" Susan asked as she walked into the kitchen. "No, I had to go out and get myself lunch from an eatery down the street," he said, unbothered. When Susan got inside the bedroom, she saw the whole house unkept, clothes littered everywhere. She held herself not to start any arguments that evening. This has been the norm since they got married. Frank was dirty. Whenever he used the toilet, he hardly cleans up. He would wear one boxers for more than a week. All the white singlets she bought for him when they traveled for honeymoon were already turning brown. She just could not understand why a full-grown man like him would want to be reminded to clean up his surroundings. He had complained and decided to keep the house clean. She quickly arranged the bedroom and also made dinner for them. As weeks went by, it became clear to Susan that Frank had no job. All these years, Frank had depended on his family and friends, ran errands for people, and was paid. This he had done for years to survive. He spent all day playing game on his phone, watching the TV, and lounging around the house every morning, while Susan woke up early to make breakfast and cook lunch and do house chores. Frank snored heavily on the bed. Frank seemed content with his idle lifestyle. This Susan was so worried. She tried to brush off all the concerns she had about Frank. She hoped he would soon adjust. She tried to encourage Frank to join her in her father's company, but he refused. He wanted to be independent as a man. "Okay now, Frank, go and look for something to do, since you don't want to work in my father's company." But she was shocked to her bone when he replied her during one of their conversations, fateful Saturday afternoon, when one of his friend Nnamdi, his best man during their wedding, visited and told him about how he got a 100,000 naira job at a private hotel as an admin officer. Saw how Frank mocked and laughed so hard at him This Susan did not take lightly. So when Nnamdi left, she confronted him. And Frank said, Susan, why do I go and do boy job? Why go and hustle in the streets when I have a multi-millionaire as a wife? Please, honey, you are making enough for us. You have to calm down now. As you can see, I'm not Nnamdi. I'm Frank, the husband to a multi-millionaire. Susan was stunned at his response. She could not believe what she just heard. It became clear to him that Frank was lazy. He was irresponsible. It got her so angry. She said to him, So Frank, you mean I go and hustle while you sit all day at home, not being valuable to yourself or anyone? It's now 2 years since we got married. You have never bought anything in this house with your own money. I'm the one financing your lifestyle. You drive one of the best cars in this town. I clothe you. I house you. Those who feed you. Spending on your family too. And now, I thought the pride of a man is in taking care of his wife and family. It is responsibility that makes a man. Don't even go out to search for a job. Before we got married, you told me you are a graduate, only for me to later know that you are a dropout. How do I even help you? All you want is for money to fall from the skies for you. See, Susan, if you want to help me, you will help me. All these things you are saying is just trash. I know that all these things you are saying is so that you will not give me the 5 million naira I asked you to give me, so I can start that business I told you about. You want me to continue to remain like this? No problems. I know is that my God is alive. I will soon hit my own jackpot. All these things I'm gazetting, this my map that I'm following, will surely take me to my desired destination. Frank replied in an intimidating voice, trying to cajole Susan. I've always fell for his blackmail anytime they had an argument. But the third time, he would be giving him a large sum of money, and Frank would return with one cock and bull story. This has been Susan's current reality. She knew she was in a deep mess. Frank was not who he seemed to be. He was just a lynch that depended on her, all his needs. One fateful evening, Susan came back so exhausted. As she walked into their sitting room, she pleaded with Frank to help make dinner, which was in the fridge. Please, honey, I want you to help me microwave the jollof rice and chicken is in the fridge. I'm so exhausted. I feel so tired. She yawned and stretched herself, only for Frank to say to her, Honey, you have forgotten that I've never used a microwave before, and you know it. Please, just allow me finish this football match. The squad for today's match is unbeatable, he said, walking out of their bedroom back to the living room. Susan was surprised and sad at the same time. Frank was unbothered about her health. She just complained that she was tired. She was very hungry, so she encouraged herself and tried to walk to the kitchen. She screamed and slumped on the floor. Frank, hearing her voice, ran to their bedroom and met Susan lying unconscious on the floor. He was jittery, his hands shaking in fear as he called out her name, but she was not responding. So he quickly took Susan to a nearby clinic where the doctors attended to her, and a few hours later, Susan regained consciousness. Frank was so sorry. He pleaded with her, also asking for forgiveness as he sat by her side, holding her hands. Please, honey, I'm so sorry. I did not know you were that exhausted. But Susan only nodded her head disappointedly. Frank looked so sorry. Later on, one of the doctors came with the lab results. He was smiling. He broke the news to them. Congrats, madam. You are pregnant and some weeks gone. And that was the cause of the exhaustion. You were stressed, burnt out. That was why you passed out. So I would advise that you take care of yourself and have enough good rest so that your body could recuperate. You know you are now carrying a child. You have to take it easy. Sir, as he turned to Frank, you have to also assist your wife in any way you can to relieve her of the stress, especially at home. Susan and Frank looked at each other and smiled. They were so happy. Susan held her stomach. She was so happy. Finally, she would become a mother. She hoped Frank was going to change. When they got home, 2 days later, Frank tried to help out with some house chores, but soon got tired about everything. He snapped at any little thing. One morning, after Susan had her breakfast, she vomited on the floor. This irritated made Frank so angry. He confronted Susan. Susan, you are not the first woman to be pregnant, I'm not your houseboy, I'm your husband, he said harshly. See how you vomited all over the place, and you are there lying down, expecting me to clean up the place. Think I don't know what is happening? So because I'm not contributing anything in this house, I'm now your houseboy. Susan, I'm so disappointed. When Susan tried to talk, Frank shut her down. Please stop that. I know your plan. But let me tell you, it will not work. You know I'm only doing you a favor. I did what other men could not do. Continue to rant. Susan was in pain and shock. She knew she was not going to continue like this. Frank was her worst mistake she has made in life. She was so desperate. She saw the red flags, but she ignored them. She thought and believed Frank would change. She met Frank when she was vulnerable. That point of her life, what she wanted was love and care. And that Frank gave to her. But he was a leopard in sheep clothing. He was a liar. She was afraid of losing him. But this time, she was already getting fed up with his inadequacies. She had taken a lot from him. These 4 years they've lived together, she had felt alone and exhausted in her marriage. When Frank left the house in anger, she called her friend Laura on the phone. The next day when she got to her office, she spoke at length. This is so bad. I thought you did due diligence on Frank before starting any relationship with him. Laura looked so disappointed and sad. Well, Laura, I did nothing. I was so in love with him. I allowed my emotions becloud my judgments. I was vulnerable. You know you were out of the country with your husband. I could not even talk with my mother, who was always pressurizing me to get married. That point when I met Frank, I was not thinking. I just needed a man in my life. Well, Susan, it's still not too late. You can talk to him, but if he continues this way, Susan, you cannot take your decision. After all, your life is not hanging on Frank. It's true you are carrying his child. I beg, let's forget about Frank. How is my baby doing? Laura asked, smiling. He is kicking very well. I cannot wait for my due date to come. I'm already getting tired and Frank is not helping matters at all. So that's why I have to be happy, even though he's really stressing me. Thank God you understand, Laura replied. You have to stay focused. Don't get yourself worked up because of a man that have refused to help himself. Thank you so much, Laura, for always being here. Susan thanked Laura. So Laura stayed behind while Susan continued her work. Later on that afternoon, they went home together. In the 8th month of Susan's pregnancy, she had left her office very early to go and rest as she was feeling somehow. As she drove into their compound, she heard loud music and voices of people. At first, she thought it was from their neighbor's house, but when she alighted from her car and came closer to the apartment, it confirmed her fears. It was her house. She quietly opened the door and met Frank dancing with some young girls and some men. We are drinking alcoholic wine and smoking. She almost lost her breath as the whole place choked her. She screamed. Frank did not notice her as he was busy dancing seducingly with one of those girls. Frank, so this is what you do when I go out. You bring in men and women into our home and turn it into a disco hall. The men and the young women quickly took their shoes in their hands and hurriedly left Susan's house. Frank looked so sorry. He was on his knees, pleading with Susan, who was so mad. She felt this pang of pain in her heart. She ignored Frank and quietly walked into their bedroom. She locked the door behind her, weeping loudly. Frank was at the door. Sonny, open the door. Let me explain everything to you. It was the devil. I was bored. You know I don't like this life. Please, open the door. Can talk. Frank pleaded with Susan. Meanwhile, that same day, Susan went into premature labor and she was rushed to the hospital by her friend Laura, who she had called earlier on that day. The doctors quickly attended to her. They tried to stop the labor as it was not yet time for the baby to come out. But Susan started bleeding. So, to save Susan's life, that of her unborn child, the doctors quickly performed surgery on her, and due to some complications, Susan lost the child. Susan laid on the hospital bed, lost in deep thoughts. Her eyes were swollen due to crying. She refused to speak to no one. She continued to mumble words that no one could hear. She could not believe that because of Frank's misbehavior, she landed herself into this mess. Frank was also shaken by the news of the death of their child. He was guilty. He knew lost every chance to remain in Susan's life. Please, Susan, you have to eat and take your bath. It's been 4 days now since the death of your child, and you have only been taking fluid. Now you just had surgery, and you need food and vitamins so you can recuperate well. I know this is so painful for you. You know I also feel your pain. But you also have to remember that your life matters here. No matter how you weep, nothing can change what has happened. Laura was so sad, worried for her friend, Susan, who have not spoken to her for the past 4 days. She has just been mumbling words, took only water and tea. Laura also had to call Mama Susan on the phone so she could be with her daughter at that time. Susan's mother arrived from Lagos a few days later. This time, Susan was back from the hospital. Susan, my child, you know you are all I've got. Please, do not allow my enemies rejoice over me. I know you are so disheartened, for she is also my first grandchild. She know I've always wanted all these years. But no one can question God. I still thank God that you are alive. If I have lost you this process, what would have become of me? My daughter, know that no matter how gloomy everything looks right now, there's still light that is shining brighter. Tomorrow will be better than today. Mama, 43. I thought God finally wiped away my shame, my tears. See Frank now. Do you know he has been cheating on me these years? Being the one feeding him, clothing him, funding his lavish lifestyle for him. Mama, I got married to a chronic playboy. I found out that this has been doing since he came to Asaba for many years now. But I promise I'm going to deal with him. Make sure he leaves my house wretched. See the way he came into my life. Susan was crying. It's okay, my daughter. Just be fine. And every other thing will be taken care of. As for Frank, we meet his nemesis. I will surely deal with him. Assure you. As weeks passed, Susan became better and went back to her work. She threw Frank out of their home, made sure she froze all his accounts, sure that nothing was left on him that was from her. Frank, while still living with Susan, put a young girl named Carol, a recharge card seller, the family way. She was much younger and he really loved her. Carol was the one he wanted to spend the rest of his life with. He was so happy that he was able to establish a big business center, fully furnished. Carol, also, he rented an apartment he paid for 2 years and also tastefully furnished it for her. So, when Susan threw him out of her house, he was so happy that he made that move with Carol. So that evening, Frank went to Carol's apartment. When Carol opened the door, at first, he refused to open the door. She was surprised to see Frank at that time of the day. Hello, babe, what is happening? Why don't you want to open the door for me to come in? I hope everything is fine. So as Carol hesitated to open the door for him, Frank pushed her by the side and entered the apartment, only for him to see a young man that looked like a bouncer at the club. He had broad shoulders. He looked so intimidating. Frank, in anger, desperation, turned to Carol. Carol, who is he? And what is he doing in our house? What is happening here? Carol was mute. She was trying to find the right words to say. For the young man, he was just pressing his phone. And in a few moments, 3 young men walked into the apartment and they pounced on Frank and beat him mercilessly. Well, as you can see, I'm in the wrong address. This woman here is carrying my child. She belongs to me and not you. All these years, you have been cheating on your wife. You are very stupid and useless. An ungrateful man. I've heard everything about you and your wife. Well, that's the choice you made. You won't say I did not warn you. Don't come and spoil my own for me. If I dare see you close to my house, these your 2 left legs. Anything I do to you, take it. Nonsense. Babe, let's go inside. We won't trouble you again. That was how Dixon, young man that was in Carol's apartment, walked with Carol into the apartment. Frank could not believe what happened. He was still sitting down, weeping, bruises all over his body, when Dixon came out again. Hey, Oga, as for that 2 million naira you gave to my wife, you have no proof to show that you gave her any money. Let me warn you again. I don't want to see you close to my wife. But Frank was lost for words. He was so shocked to his bone. He thought Carol was calm, was naive, always believed that the child she was carrying was his, not knowing that he has been sowing on another man's garden all this time. Frank was filled with regret and shame. Police was also after him. Frank, since he came into Asaba, have been swindling matured single ladies of their hard-earned money. He would propose marriage to them, and at the end, he would break up with them. and walk away with their money, leaving them heartbroken. He never knew karma would be Caro has lost everything. The business center he had established for Caro, he has lost out. So that was how Frank traveled back to his village in shame. However, a few years later, Susan met Okezie, a God-fearing man who truly loved her and was not there for just her wealth, but he was indeed a godsend. Keze was indeed a consolation to Susan, who had given up on true love. At 46, she got married to Keze, who loved and adored her. Through Keze, she found hope and God again. Time. She became more dedicated to God and served with Okezie in their local church. Same year they got married. Susan and Okezie had a baby boy. Susan and Okezie lived happily ever after. Thank you so much for watching this story. I really appreciate you all. I would like us to comment in the comment section moral lessons we have learned from this story. Let's share our thoughts there. Please give this story a thumbs up, share with your loved ones, and subscribe if you have not subscribed to this channel for more beautiful stories. And until I come again with another beautiful story, stay blessed and bye!